Hey everybody, it's your boy, Princess Dank, and I thought I would bring to you a video today about how I put my first album on cassette in the year of our Lord, 2023. I was asked a little while ago by fellow music producer Zevovex about physical media for my music. Everything that I've put out since I started putting out music in 2022 has been digital. It's all been on Bandcamp and Spotify and other streaming services like that. And I thought physical media was simply too expensive. It was out of the question. I had this misconception that, nobody really uses CD anymore. Vinyl, you have to put at least, $2,000 up front to get a master record produced and then to get enough records pressed so that it makes the whole thing worth it. But that was until I started learning about how cassette tapes work. I'm not 100% sure where that initially started, but I think it was probably simply being on Bandcamp and seeing how many other independent artists put their music on cassette. And I figured there has to be a reason for that, right? Come to find out, it is actually the arguably cheapest and easiest thing to do on your own at home. So I'm going to walk you through the process of how I picked out all the materials that I used, how I actually made the tapes and their packaging, and how I am selling them online right now. Which, by the way, this album, Giving Lemurs Anxiety, is available in limited quantity on my Bandcamp right now if you want to support the channel and if you want to, get some snazzy physical media. The first physical media from Princess Dank. Fellow YouTuber and streamer Joe Schmo, aka Joe Schmo Gaming, came to visit a few months ago. We went to a lot of thrift stores. We were mostly looking for gaming stuff, but I had two objectives. One, I wanted to find a VCR, and I wanted to find a tape deck, because the important thing for making your own tapes at home is having a tape deck that has a functioning record head in it. I was advised by another musician who releases a ton of music, especially on Bandcamp and especially on cassette, that I should be on the lookout for a 3-head cassette deck. Now, in the case of a 3-head deck, one head erases the magnetism on the tape, one plays the magnetism that's on a tape, and one records. The advantage of having a 3-head deck is that you can record and then immediately play. You can monitor what you're recording to the tape as you're recording it. You don't have to go back and listen a second time after the recording. So, it cuts an entire step out of the process and it saves a lot of time. At one of the thrift stores we visited, I found a Pioneer CTW 530R. It's a double cassette deck that was manufactured in 1990. One of the people working at the thrift store actually said that it was their old cassette deck. I didn't have to take as much of a risk. I was like, hey, does this work? And they said yes. I said, does the record head work? They said yes. All right, perfect. We're in business. I got it home, I tested it, and lo and behold, with just like a little bit of cleaning, it was great. The only downside is that the headphone output, the left channel, borderline doesn't work. And the equalizer on the front is kind of faulty. It tells you that it's outputting sound at a much lower level than it actually is, which we'll get into why that was a little bit of an issue later. Once I had the cassette deck, the important thing then was to clean it. I'm not at all mechanically savvy. And what I settled on was 90% isopropyl alcohol. I was reading online, that's the lowest concentration of alcohol that you should use to clean cassette heads. I dipped a Q-tip in it and rubbed it on the cassette head just to make sure that it was nice and clean and didn't have any sort of funkiness still lingering for the past 33 years. The other thing that a lot of people recommend is demagnetizing the tape heads just to make sure that there's no magnetic interference, because essentially a tape head is just an electromagnet, and if it's holding any sort of magnetic charge, that could interfere with the actual sound quality when you're recording. I was happy with the sound that it was producing already off of a test recording that I did. I should mention, the tape deck was $25 in really good condition considering that it was that cheap. I would highly recommend, if you're not able to find something online that's in your price range, check out thrift stores, check out flea markets, and don't do what I did. If you have the opportunity, test it before you buy it. If you want to see more of that outing with Joe, by the way, go check out his video of his game hunting from those couple of days that he was visiting. After I had acquired the tape deck, what I needed were the correct supplies to hook it up and the correct supplies to record. This particular tape deck, and a lot of them that you'll find from the 80s and 90s, if not virtually all of them, it used just simple left and right channel RCA connectors. I bought a RCA to 1/8 inch converter, one for recording and one for playback. I put the converters into the line in and the line out. I got two male to male 1/8 inch cables that I then ran from the converters into my PC in the line in and line out. For supplies, I was recommended by another producer that releases a lot of stuff on tape. This company, Delta Media, which I am not sponsored by them. It was roughly $100. I got 25 tapes. I got, I think, 120 labels, which you need 2 per cassette, one for side A and one for side B, or you don't have to. Actually, you could just put them on one side if you want. And then I got about 40 pre-perforated, easily foldable J cards to determine the length of tape that I actually needed. Because when you order from a company like this, you're going to tell them how long you want the tape to be. And of course, you're going to want to use as much of the tape as possible, so side A and side B. What you need to do is, using a program like Audacity, drag all of your tracks into the timeline, give the correct amount of space in between each track that you want, as close as you can to the middle of the track list. You want to cut and make a second file. So then you end up with one continuous track that is side A and one continuous track that is side B. It's important that you have these as single files so that then when you are actually recording to the cassette, you can just set it and forget it. Unless, of course, you did manage to get a 3-head tape deck and you are monitoring the entire time that you're recording, in which case you don't want to forget it. So once you've made your side A file and your side B file, you want to select the length of tape while buying that approximately reaches that average between the two sides. I've done some reading after the fact, and I've seen some people recommend that, particularly from this company, buy tapes that have about an extra half a minute of tape on them, just to be safe. I've seen a couple of horror stories of people receiving tape that isn't quite long enough. Luckily, this didn't happen to me, but I wish that I had seen these stories before I tried this. Now you get to the fun part. You've got your tape deck, you've got it cleaned, your supplies have arrived. First, you want to do a test, because every tape deck is going to have its own quirks, its own idiosyncrasies. To do a test, you're going to want to take your first tape. With your test, I would recommend just starting with a couple seconds. All that we're trying to do right now is get our levels correct. The things that you're going to want to particularly fiddle with are the output level. I ended up outputting at, I think, about 60 to 70%. Change your view to decibels instead of the default view, and see if your audio is peaking at those loudest parts. If it is, you're going to want to lower those levels on the deck or on the output itself. Do that until you're satisfied. You also want to look at the quietest parts too. As far as I know, every modern computer motherboard should have a line in. If it doesn't, something to note is that if you're running Windows and you run your deck in through your mic input, your microphone input is probably going to automatically have an adjustment to increase the volume by a measure of 10 or 20 decibels. Make sure, if you have to use the microphone port, that this is not enabled. You can check this in your sound settings. This is not going to give you a true sense of what the tape sounds like. This is why you want to use line in, because line in won't amplify it. You'll just hear it as the line in is picking it up directly from the tape. That'll give you a much truer sense. Now you've got your levels all adjusted. You are set to actually start recording these things. I was running a 26-minute album. so about 13 minutes per side, and I needed to record 25 copies of it. I set a timer on my phone for 12 minutes. I put in the cassette into the recording side of the deck, armed it for record, hit play in Audacity, double checked to make sure that the EQ on the front of the deck was denoting that it was recording, and then started my 12-minute timer. That would usually give me about 30 seconds or so to get back into my office and make sure that it was working properly. Something else to note here, I closed every extemporaneous program. I made sure that everything was muted except for Audacity, because I don't want like Discord notifications popping up on one copy of the tape that I'm trying to sell. Once the timer was up, I came in, made sure that the deck was still recording, made sure that the Audacity recording was almost completed. Once the Audacity recording finished, hit stop on the deck, fast forward to the end of side A, flip it over so that you're now on side B, and repeat those steps for the side B recording in Audacity. And then just repeat that for like 12 hours. I think this took me a total of 3 or 4 days, and it involved a lot of hanging out with people IRL and watching anime, because I effectively couldn't use my computer the entire time that I was dubbing these. You can, in the case of a double deck like this, or if you have two decks that are chained together, one output running into another one's input, you can dub from tape to tape. I have not tested this. The important thing for me was making sure that every tape sounded as good as possible. I could have just made a master tape and then dubbed every other one from that. I wanted to make sure that they all sounded as good as possible, so I dubbed all of them straight from my computer. After this point, you've got your 25 tapes. In the case of, like, I'm running a 2-head deck, I could not monitor them while they were running. What I needed to do was play a sample of the tapes to make sure that they actually sounded like they should, to make sure that nothing was lost in translation, nothing was peaking or clipping or anything like that. I used the same method as I did for running the initial equalization and level test. Once I was sure that all 25 tapes were set to go, the next thing that I wanted to do was pop out those little tabs. I know that some other tape manufacturers and distributors don't even bother producing them with tabs anymore. And if you're buying from somebody like that, like I know duplication.ca doesn't include tabs in most of their tapes, then you're going to want to use the tape method to cover the tabs so that you can record on your tape using tape. I feel like Exhibit. But in the case of Delta Media, all of their tapes, as far as I know, come with their tabs still in. Take a little tool like a glasses screwdriver or something like that and pop those tabs out so that then your cassettes are right. Protected. Next, if you do distribute your music through Bandcamp, something that I chose to do, I included download codes in the cassette itself. You get 200 for free with your account, even if it's not a pro account, and then after that point you have to buy them for $3 per 100. So in the grand scheme of things, that's not too much. It's 3 cents per code. If you're selling enough cassettes like this, you can probably justify that cost pretty easily. When you start out, you have to do that 100. I'm only producing 25 tapes. I get 100 codes. Why not? I'm going to put 2 in each release. I printed these out on some nice cardstock just to make it look a little bit nicer, and I threw those in there. I also, just as a little extra bonus, I produced these certificates of authenticity that I numbered so that I know and whoever purchases these knows exactly what number they received from this initial dubbing. After that, though, we also have to consider design. You can find templates for J-cards and cassette labels on a couple of different websites. I'll include links in the description for those. I went with the templates that were for the exact ones that I was using. So Delta Media provided templates for their products, essentially. But you can use a free photo manipulation or paint program like I use Krita. Put the template in there just so that you make sure that you're getting your centering and your bleed correct and everything like that. And I essentially took the assets for the original album cover and rearranged them to make them look a little bit nicer, because most album art is done in square. Cassettes are not square, as you may have realized. This part is really just all about being creative with it. Same thing with the cassette labels. I made mine pretty simple. I used 2 sections of the background for the cover art so that each side would have a slightly different look to it, and then I put some text on there and made sure that it fit in the template for both of these. Once you have the interior and the exterior of the J cards set up, you can do 2-sided printing. I did this by hand. If you have the fancy pants printer, yours might be able to do it automatically. You just need to make sure that the alignment is correct so that one side is not going to be printing upside down from the other. With this pre-perforated paper that I had, it was really simple to just tear it apart and fold it, and there you go, there's your J card. Same with the labels, they just peeled right off, and I smacked them right on the cassettes. At that point, you're pretty much done. One more thing, I actually wanted to go one step further because I like there being little extras in releases like this to further incentivize people going for them. I decided that the best thing for this was probably going to be stickers that were small enough that they would fit into the case, so it could all just be in one package. I actually used, once again, hashtag not sponsored, Sticker App. Their ads finally got to me. They got a cat in them. I was like, all right, let's go. Let's try this. I was able to get 40 of these about 2x2 stickers. I was really happy with the quality of these. It's all browser based. Essentially, I just uploaded a PNG of this little anxious lemur, and it gave me the outline and the die cut pattern. All in all, the project was about $155, maybe $160. If we round it up. The stickers were an unnecessary part of it, and your mileage may vary on how much you're going to spend on a tape deck. The idea that now I have the startup for any more tape runs that I need to do, and that I can do further runs for only $100 at 25 tapes per run, that's not bad. The final part, if again you do use Bandcamp, you can add merch to pre-existing releases through the add button on your dashboard. It's going to ask you what you want to add. You select cassette, you select the release that it applies to, you set the cost, you set your shipping costs, which in the US, if you do live in the US, you can use media mail to ship cassettes. That's usually about $4, give or take. It changes depending on the weight. But then international shipping is absolutely egregious. I would recommend go to the USPS website and check how much it would cost to send a package of this weight and size to, I think it's Canada and Mexico. And then I selected Hong Kong for the other one because it's about halfway across the world. So I figured that would probably give me the maximum amount for shipping. As far as I know, you cannot turn off international shipping on Bandcamp, so you need to make sure that these numbers are correct, or at least close to correct, so that you're not losing 200% of the cost per cassette for every one that you sell to somebody in Japan, basically. And that actually pretty much covers the entire process. I'm going to also link below some other videos covering this same topic. A handful of them I checked out as I was working my way through this. Some of the rest of it was just reading forum posts from like 10 years ago and stumbling through it myself. I will probably do an update video when I release my second album on cassette, because I do plan to do that in the future. I'm going to do a couple things differently. I know somebody who has access to a cutting machine. I'm going to try to produce my own stickers to see how the quality differs. And I'm also going to try to purchase my tapes from a different vendor this time, probably Duplication, like I was talking about. The alluring thing to me is that Duplication allows you to buy in quantities of fewer than 25. The tapes are more expensive then, even though they're based in Canada. The shipping cost for me is about the same as it was from Delta Media. Basically, I could do a run of my second album and then do a couple vanity pressings of various other projects and only do them in quantities of 3 or 4 for not a whole lot extra. Whereas somewhere like Delta Media, you have to buy in quantities of 25, so it makes it a little bit harder to justify that. Something else that I find interesting about Duplication is the amount of other shell colors and styles that they have. Delta, I don't know if they cycle their colors, but they didn't have a whole lot available when I ordered these, whereas Duplication seems to pretty much permanently have dozens and dozens and dozens of options. So I'll check that out in the future, and I'll definitely, actually, yeah, no, not maybe. I will definitely make an update video once I go through with that project, because I feel like there are going to be some differences there, and I'd really like to report back on the highs and lows of these various projects. So that is how I put my first album from a digital download onto cassette and sold it through Bandcamp, which, again, it is still, as of this recording at least, there are still copies available. So if you want to check that out and support the channel, please, by all means, do. If you're interested in any of my other stuff, I do a variety of things on this channel, so please drop a like and a subscribe, and I'm really hoping that this coming year, I'm going to be doing more music-focused content, and this was just the first thing that I had in mind for that. Thank you for sticking around while I was no doubt long-winded and rambly. Bye.